This is the Project Framework Technology Preview from exocad. My name is Jeff Swalby. I'll be walking you through this video. This is our tool palette on the left here, which shows the icons you'll be using to design. As you hold your cursor over each icon, it will display the name as well as the relative hotkey. As you see, clone here with a C key, and the draw curve tool with a D key. Down here it shows you what is displayed on the screen, and in the bottom corner is the current or active tool. Each time you select a new tool in the tool palette, you get a different dynabar down below with different flavors for the tool. You can rotate the model with a right click of the mouse, and you'll see the survey tool brings in the path of insertion arrow, which you'll notice is white. With a right click on the background of the screen, you can choose distance colors, and this displays the values which are editable for the relative undercut color. Once you're satisfied, you click OK. As you notice, with right click, the colors do not change and the arrow stays white. If I left click on the model, the path insertion arrow turns red, and when we release, you'll see the colors do change and adapt to your movements. If you've made several movements and you get a little confused and you want to restart, you click this reset arrow. If you want the straight down version from above, click the path of insertion circle. So once you have it in position, you want to block out the undercuts, and a typical draft angle is 2 to 3 degrees. We set that value, and then we hit the apply icon to block out the undercuts. The wax appears over the entire model at that 2 degrees, and the software automatically brings in the proper smudging tool to expose the undercuts where your clasp tips will be placed. Don't be concerned if you remove too much wax. It's not an issue. You'll still be able to place the clasp tip where you want. We rotate to the other side, take care of this mesial undercut, and then for training purposes, we'll remove a little area here for an eye bar. Once we exposed all our undercuts, we hit the apply button, and you see the beige wax turns to blue blockout wax. That is not smudgeable. You are able to reverse that with the green select tool if you've made a mistake or you want to make an additional exposure. If you right click in the background again and click Save for Build, this time it reveals the automatic relief checkbox. You can turn that on and off, and that adds about 50 microns underneath the major connector only. Okay? And if you choose the Smooth tool, you're able to add additional relief in places of heavy rugae or rough areas or nobules or voids. As you can see here, I'm laying a thin layer over these various areas that we mentioned, and I will have to be sure to turn that into blue blockout wax here when I say add to blockout icon before I start adding design wax over the top of that. Now click on the draw tool, and I'll start drawing the clasp curves on the involved teeth simply by left clicking and dragging the mouse. When I get to the end point, I can double click to end. You always want to rotate your model into the best position to give you the best view to accomplish your drawing. can see here I'm drawing some buccal cusps on the premolars. And I will draw a roach clasp here just for training purposes. Obviously, this is not proper design for a partial denture. We'll just use this as a learning tool. I have you drawing the curves for the clasp first, because as you'll notice, if you have the major connector down first, sometimes the draw pencil will want to catch one of those existing curves and snap to it. So you have to rotate to a really advantageous view. But by doing the clasp first, you won't have that interference. All these curves are registered in the object list, which you can view by clicking O on the keyboard, the letter O. And all these curves can be turned on and off. So that's another way to not have any interference. So you click and drag the edit points to establish a curve for the major connector, and now you see here we're doing the same thing for our first mesh area. Proceed to the anterior mesh area and then the second posterior mesh area. Notice how you have to cross over and overlap the curves of the major connector, and that's to take advantage of our new mesh connector tool, which we just clicked here, and that identifies all our curves with orange ID tags. I also drew a distal tissue stop, so you can see how that's labeled as well. So we click Preview in the Dynabar, as well as the Settings tab, and you'll notice the preview on the model. It brought in a round mesh pattern, which we can snap onto this ball on the vector arrow and rotate, as well as grab the vector arrow head and resize the holes of the mesh. We also have in the patterns for the mesh a drop down to choose several different types. We have squares, diamonds, and round holes. Once again, you use the interactive circle to rotate relative to the ridge. We also have numerical values for the size and depth of the holes. And then in the connector pattern, we now have another drop down, which offers different patterns for the stipple. And you can also set the values for the depth of the stipple. Now we move into the clasp tool. We click on the clasp, and we have different profiles in the Dynabar. Here I've chosen the long clasp. If you see a tapered end and a non-tapered end, you can swap ends, and you'll notice the thickest part is then presented at the mesial of the tooth. And you can also click the box to taper both ends, and here you can see how you can slide and adjust the tip for the undercut degree. We hit apply, and that turns our profile into wax. We'll rotate the model to get a good buccal view of these premolar clasps. I'll use the profile library to switch to the short clasp. Click on the first. I don't have to do any adjusting or sliding of the edit points there. Here I can change my value or my width, and can also change the taper. I'll apply that clasp and proceed to the second premolar. No adjusting there. Apply that as well. Now those are single curve clasps. Here you see a single curve in the type, the dual type, and the triple curve type. So for the roach, we've drawn 3 curves. We'll use the triple. Now those have to be clicked on in the same sequence as they were drawn. You'll get this preview. You can adjust your widths, drag your edit points, whatever you need. And then you'll notice down here the clasp we want set to 0 to touch the tooth, but the approach arm we want to have off the tissue. So we'll set that typically to 0.2 or 0.3, and you'll notice it jumps away from the model. In this area here, you can see some space, and then we'll just apply that to wax. If you ever need to erase a clasp, you can erase the wax, and the curve can be reused. So here we click apply, and we'll connect it up to the mesh later on. So we're rotating the model with the right click. We're choosing a different profile, back to the short for these bracing clasps. Now you notice they did not apply, because sometimes people forget to go back to the single type clasp, and now you see they will apply. So be sure after using a double or triple that you go back to match the clasp type to the curve drawn. And we'll apply those two clasps, and we'll continue with the long clasp on the ring clasp. And don't be too critical about drawing your curves for clasps. As you can see here, you can always edit the profile and slide the clasped tip into the undercut further or back. You can also move the curve up and down. We'll apply that. And now we'll click on this I-bar arm. And here, since we've only drawn a single curve, unlike the roach on the other side, we do not have the approach available to offset. So we'll offset the clasp, 0.2 or 0.3 here. And then later we'll make contact with the tooth with another method. That will be accomplished with the clone tool, your waxing tool. And you can set that to about 0.75 and sneak in behind the arm and apply wax to touch the tooth. And we'll smooth that in later. So when you do rotate, the model does pixelate. We're going to stay in that clone tool, but we'll adjust the thickness. Apply a little wax interproximally. We'll lay down a little bit of wax to later establish our minor connector. Don't be concerned with the thickness as of yet. And while we're in that tool with a good view, we'll change our thickness to the rest stop wax thickness and apply rest stops where needed. We'll rotate the model again. And here we'll put in a lingual rest on the cuspid and draw the wax further down to the major connector for another minor connector, which will thicken up later. So I've changed my thickness value to 1.25 or maybe a 1.5, and you can wax in your minor connectors to your clasps. Don't struggle with a view. Try to give yourself the best view at all times to work. As you see here, I have a nice view of the mesial of this molar. And you can make the tool a little wider and do it in one swipe, or you can do it in two swipes. You want to keep both hands on the keyboard, and constantly you'll be adjusting between keys and pluses and minus. So here we're laying down a little bit more clone wax to connect to the major connector, and later on we'll put our finish line in that area. And we will smooth when we are finished designing. So use a select wax with ball tool, which is the green tool, and this is a second way to create a tissue stop within the mesh. You can see the first one underneath the mesh there that we drew the circle for. And now this one, we've converted the blue block out back to wax, And if you use the smudge tool, you can see it goes all the way down to the model now. So we rotate and it pixelates again. We choose the draw curve tool and we lay down a curve for our first finish line. While you're in this tool, you want to continue and draw all your curves for the finish lines at one time. Again, double click to end the curve. And these points are also editable. So I click on the finish line tool in the tool palette and I click on the curve and a profile appears. We have a profile library that brings up a default. You can see here in the library a list of some other ones available. And you can also create your own profile here with this icon. And you grab the points, create a pattern, and then we want to save that as whatever you name it, and then press done. Here I'll just say no for training purposes, but you would say yes. And you can grab the orange ball, which is the interactive rotating circle, and tilt it towards the mesh or away from the mesh. If you're happy with the position, you just click apply, and that turns the profile to wax. Again, we grab the interactive tool. If you want to tilt it, once you're satisfied, you hit apply. I'm going to change the profile here for this longer posterior finish line. Grab the interactive ball, use the interactive tool to rotate to a certain degree, and then click apply again. And we'll smooth these in later as well. Now we choose the clone tool, and we'll change our thickness to 2.0 because the relief pad and the mesh is 1.75. And this is the third way that you can add a tissue stop. If you want to add a post, you click on the Add Post tool, you click on the mesh area, you rotate the model so you can see the angle of the central. You want to line up with that, then rotate back for the left and right angle. You lock on to the orange ball on top of the post, click on the mouse and rotate. You can use the roller wheel to enlarge your image. Now setting the width and the length of the post is done in the Dynabar, and then you simply click apply. To add retention, mechanical retention, we're going to drop down the size of thickness to a 0.25, and then holding down Control will allow you to click small beads on the post. That's one way to create mechanical retention. A second way is to use the Draw Curve tool with a pencil, and this will create a screw thread type retention on the post. Double click the end of the line, choose the Pipe tool in the tool palette, set that to typically 1.0 or 0.5. Click on the curve. This is a positive pipe, this is a negative pipe, and we want to use the negative or subtract pipe tool to create that pipe thread on the post. So rotate the model again, choose the smooth tool or hit the B key, and we'll just show you how the smooth tool kind of melts the wax and blends it together. The smooth level we have in the Dynabar is very low, but you can turn it up to a higher intensity to make it more aggressive. In the smooth tool, we have the sub icons. This is melt, turning up the intensity. And we lay down a little bit of wax in the free gingival area to create an apron, but we first turned that to blue block out. Then we use the same clone tool at 0.75, which is just 0.5 less than the major connector, so that when we wax, you see we can go over the major connector, but it will not add on top of it. It's basically thinner than the major connector, so it does not affect the stipple. Then you can select your smudge tool, turn up the area of influence or the power, use the plus key to make the tool larger, and you can scallop these anterior apron plates. Control Z will undo any move that you make, and you can go back approximately 25 steps. So the nice thing about this software is everything's reversible. Choosing the smooth tool is one option to smooth out the wax you just added. You can blend it into the major connector. And the first sub icon, which is melt, is the most aggressive. And this second icon is flatten, and that does not create any flash when you melt. The melt tool creates a small amount of flash if you have the power turned up very high. Now remember, our smudge tool is this erasing tool, as you see here, and I'll Control Z that. However, it can also be used to bulk up wax from the underneath side or inside the wax. You increase the size of the tool, you turn down the area of influence, and you hit the Shift key and hold it down. This pops the tool underneath the wax, and with swiping strokes and a left click, you're able to puff up the wax and make that minor connector thicker and blend it into the major connector. Do not drag the mouse. You want to use quick swipes. If you drag, it kind of pulls the wax away from the model. You can use it in other areas to do the same thickening process. I'll go underneath this minor connector and bulk that up a little bit. Nice quick swipes with the left mouse click, and we'll smooth that out. We do have a measuring tool in utilities that you can hang over any part of the wax, and will give you the thickness of the wax. A little smoothing while we're in a good view, but we don't want to spend too much time on that right now. Just to give you an idea of how well that works. It's very tempting to smooth when you see something that needs it, but it's better to wait to the end and we can go over everything at one time. Okay. Now with this tug tool, it's very convenient to adjust the top of a finish line, or if you wanted to relocate the post or pull up some wax and make it a little thicker. It's a great tool, and increase the size of it with plus and minus key, or control holding down with the scroll wheel on the mouse. If you see any holes you want to reopen, then you can use the smudge tool, set the area of influence to the right power that you want, and just remove any wax that was placed in those holes from overlapping. Okay. I'll switch to the smooth tool now. rotate the model, get into a good view, and just continue a little smoothing on that finish line, edge of the major connector. And you can see if I choose to flatten for the rest seats, it just basically smooths down the wax without creating any flash. The melt, or the first icon, is a little more aggressive if you have the smooth level up, but you can still learn to be careful with that and not create too much flashing. Here we're smoothing the cloned wax into the mesh to make it one piece. And you can also smooth under the finish line area if you want. And then we'll use the smudge tool to open up those holes inside the mesh. And now here I'm going to show you how to connect the I-bar approach arm to the mesh. Using the clone tool, we'll set it up to 1.75 because that's the thickness of the blue relief pad and the mesh. 1.0 plus 0.75. And then I set it to the mesh thickness, which is 0.75. And I create a support path to strengthen that into the mesh, smooth it off, and later we can bulk that up. So I did jump ahead a little bit here, and you'll see with that smudge tool and holding down shift, I'm able to go inside the wax again, and using my quick swipes to bulk up that area. Since this is an area of weakness, you don't want it to break. You want to make it nice and strong. So when you have a large area of wax, you don't want to spend a lot of time rubbing the smooth tool over it. You can use a second method of smoothing. The smooth area icon gives you this tool with an orange ball that you can paint the surface, turn up your smooth level, and then that's your feather edge. And every time you click on apply, it will smooth down that entire area of wax. When you click on the clear button, it will reveal the results of that smooth area tool. With this mask red ball tool, if you want to work on an area but not influence a neighboring area, such as with tug, you paint that area with red to mask it. And then as I work on the beige wax, you'll notice that the protected red area is not affected. And hit clear to remove that red marking. Rotate the model again. Now, there is a 90-degree angle created from the blue pad underneath that approach arm. So if you want to make a 45-degree angle to give it a little more gentle slope on the underside of the partial, you add a little smooth wax there at a 45-degree angle. Then you green select tool, paint it green, and then we'll convert that to blue block out. Then you would draw your curve for your approach arm over the top of that. Gives a nice 45-degree angle of wax. If you'd like to emboss your company logo or your patient's name, doctor's name, or even a number, you can create that in Microsoft Paint, and it's typically stored in your pictures. And you click on that file, and you use your mouse to click it in place on the partial, and we have a positive or raise, or negative or lower. At a certain distance, when you click apply, it embosses onto the wax. This is only on the top surface. We'll choose the draw tool again. And as you remember, we were drawing all our curves touching or on the model. That's with the fit to clay tool. If we click that and unfit the curve, we're able to draw across free space, clicking on the left side of the frame over to the right side of the frame. And this will be for support bars. So you click on the pipe tool, you set it to 2 millimeters. This is positive pipe. The other is negative pipe. We want a positive pipe. And we use this support bar for the printing resin option, so that after the resin parts are cleaned, they don't warp in the light. You may have to T support bar certain partials. In the best practices, we have pictures of various partials that you can use for a reference. If you don't want a metal finish on your partial, especially in a stipple area, you can use the clone tool to lay down these pads and unfit the curve in the Dynabar. Double click to end the line. Hit the pipe tool again at 2 millimeters. Touch the curve and apply in a positive fashion. So that would be 2 ways to do the support bar. Now, you want to create that STL file. To finish your partial, right click in the background, hit Save for Build, answer the prompts, and wait for the blue progress bar along the bottom of your screen. Now be patient, we have sped this up for the video, so it will take a little longer than you're seeing here. And once that's finished, you'll see the gray file appear on the screen. Your final STL file output will be located in your project folder. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helps you learn how to design your partials. Please enjoy your free preview.